4 p.m. on Monday, September 18th. I'd like to call the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting to order. The first thing is the land acknowledgement. The town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas, recognized through Treaty 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. A shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Let it be so. Okay, approval of the agenda. Who would like to approve the agenda? Thank you. Second. Oh, I'll take.
Go ahead.
I'll take the gentleman in the night suit. Yeah. All those in favor? Oh, I should say, any questions or comments on the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll go on to receipt of the minutes from a while ago, May 15th. May I please have a motion to receive the meeting minutes of May 15th, 2023, moved by, we just go around the table. Thank you so much. And I need a second. Thank you. Okay, delegations, we have none this evening.
Just call the vote on that.
Oh, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. No delegation, matters for consideration. Memorandum from Energy and Climate Change Analyst, read Corporate Environmental Action Plan 2022 Progress Report. May I have a mover and seconder to put them on the floor for discussion? Thank you. Thank you. I don't know. Okay, so wherever you're comfortable standing is good.
Had you doing this one? No.
We're gonna let them do the first. I'll do this the progress report after,
Okay,
if that's okay.
But that's what we just did. The progress.
what are they doing? Wait a second.
Oh, yes.
Yes, we can't.
They're doing energy climate.
They're doing the environmental or the energy and conservation and land management.
We just moved 7.
Yes, we did. Okay, so it's too soon for you to come.
Okay.
Sebastian has the floor. Sorry about that.
Do you have the PowerPoint, Jeff?
do.
Okay.
Sorry, just confusing.
That's okay. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone had a good summer and hope you guys all read all the great reading material that we discussed last meeting. Today, I'm just going to go over our Corporate Environmental Action Plan Progress Report from last year. So essentially how it works is every year we do a progress report on all the divisions and departments within the town of Aurora. And I tabulate all the results and we go through all the environmental successes from the year prior. So for example, this year, 2023, we discussed 2022. Next year, we're going to be discussing 2023 successes. Okay. Slide, Jacqueline. Thank you. So just a brief overview of what the CEAP is. It's the Corporate Climate Action Plan for the town of Aurora. It's a 5-year plan that outlines environmental sustainability action items directed at staff at the corporate level. There's 3 purposes to the Corporate Environmental Action Plan. One is to protect and enhance the natural environment, promote environmental sustainability, integrity and conservation of resources, and create a practice of environmental stewardship within the community. It provides corporate direction on key strategic environmental initiatives to be implemented over the next 5 years. And it assists council to plan for and implement specific actions to improve the town's environmental performance and sustainability for future generations. So as I said, essentially how this works, and you can see it through this slide, is I approach all the departments and divisions within the town, and I meet with them on an annual basis, and I essentially collaborate all the environmental successes that the departments and divisions have undergone throughout the year. There's specific objectives that are listed in the corporate environmental action plan, and if you read the plan, you would have seen the objectives that are there. And essentially, I'm just going over with each division how they're aligning their goals and strategies to the plan, and trying to keep an alignment throughout the year. And over the 5-year period, you try to reach our goals and objectives from that plan. So the plan, thank you. So the plan has 6 overarching themes. So we have water conservation, sustainable urban development, waste reduction and diversion, biodiversity and natural heritage, climate change and energy, and environmental awareness. And essentially this presentation, I'm just going to be going through each category, and this slide just explains that. I'm going to go and do a brief highlight of each category. And if you want further information, the attachment 1 to this assignment gives a more detailed overview of all the successes that have been done. So first is water conservation. Next slide, Jack. Sorry. Thank you. So just to go over some of these highlights, in 2022, a total of 1,000 water meters were installed as part of its water loss reduction strategy. Stormwater pond inspections were conducted by Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority in 2022 for the purpose of identifying deficiencies. Engineering and Operations Division completed a retrofit of a stormwater management pond facility near Deerhorn Crescent and Kennedy Street West. Operations Division performed a total of 7 oil and grit separator and 1,682 catch basin cleanouts in 2022. Total waste collected from cleanout activities and disposed of equated to about 105 tons in 2022. That one's kind of hard to see, sorry for that. Engineering Division adopted soil regulations. It was OREG 40619 into their design and construction tenders to improve the reuse of soils for construction projects. And Engineering Division also adopted York Region's infiltration and inflow standard for future projects to reduce infiltration and inflow development on new sanitary sewers. And it's kind of hard to, and the writing's kind of hard to see, unfortunately. I'm sorry for that. So just comparing the numbers to last year. So water meter installations, we increased by about 104.2%. Oil grit separator cleanouts decreased about 35.3%, and this could have been due to funding deficiency. Don't quote, I'm not going to go on the record on that. I'm just making an assumption on that. But I wouldn't be alarmed about the decrease. Catch basin cleanouts increased about 11.5%, and total waste disposal increased from last year about 2.5%. So just looking, just looking beyond the numbers, I try to just give some perspective to each sort of success. So water metering is the practice of measuring water use. The more meters installed, the better able the town is on accurately reporting its water consumption at the residential and commercial levels. The benefits of metering water include incentive for water conservation, and it helps detect water leaks in distribution networks, thus providing a basis for reducing the amount of non-revenue water. And oil and grit separators are used to trap and retain oil and sediment in detention chambers, usually located below ground. They're used for spill control as pre-treatment devices and for water control. So cleaning includes removal of accumulated oil and grease and sediment using a vacuum truck or other ordinary catch basin cleaning device. The more frequent the cleaning the OGS or oil grit separator and catch basins, the less likely sediments will be resuspended and subsequently discharged. Our next topic, our next theme, sorry, sustainable urban development. So some of the successes that were implemented on this front, we had the establishment of the formal policy on alternative work arrangements, which was developed last year and approved this year. The town applied for a grant offered through the Green Municipal Fund involving the development of a feasibility study for a community efficiency financing program within the town. The design of a new sidewalk project located along Edward Street and Industrial Parkway North to promote active transportation for residents. Engineering Division introduced a project on the development of a turtle crossing project on Henderson Drive to address wildlife conservation. The project was in its design phase in 2022, with construction anticipated to commence in 2024. And finally, community garden planned for a new park construction in the 2C lands. Construction anticipated to commence in 2023, provided available funding. So comparing the numbers for this section, a lot of it comes down to the policy that we approved for town staff. Our commuting to and from the office has decreased due to the policy introduction. And we've had an increase of 65% of participation in hybrid work arrangements. So in terms of scope 3 emissions, this policy has definitely helped reduce our scope 3 emissions on employee commuting. Next slide, Jeff. I'm sorry. Thank you. Our next section is waste reduction and diversion. So successes in this section, we have Operations Division incorporated the reuse of existing frames and lids for catch basin and manhole repairs. Engineering Division incorporated sustainable construction practices for 2022 road reconstruction projects. These practices included recycled concrete and asphalt grindings. The town of Aurora's waste diversion rate in 2022 equated to 70%. The town of Aurora's front-end multi-residential recycling program reached participation from 30 buildings. The bag tag program was implemented in January 2022, was resulted to the purchase of 3,560 bag tags. And the town had hosted 4 waste reduction stewardship programs in 2022. So looking at the numbers, compared to 2021, the town's waste diversion rate has increased by 1% since last year. Participation in multi-residential recycling program, the participants we're at stagnant, so there's no change. 30 participants was from last year as well. Participation generated from the bag tag program increased by 185%. So just looking beyond the numbers, the community energy plan, the community target for waste diversion by 2030 is 80%. So we're currently at 70% in 2023. In order for the town to reach this goal of 80%, the diversion rate of 1.25% must be achieved each year until 2030 from now going forward. And just to have some comparisons, in 2021, the York region reported a diversion rate of 65%. So based on the town's numbers, we're in alignment with the York region, which is definitely a good trend. Next slide. So this one should actually say biodiversity, natural heritage. Sorry, I forgot there was an error on that. So for successes in this theme, we have expansion of the David Tomlinson Nature Reserve located in the 2C lands into the second phase of development, which includes trails, boardwalks, native plantings, and ecological features. Parks Division planted 1,933 trees in 2022. The Phragmite strategy was approved by council in 2022, including operational funding for the next 4 years. Online promotions were administered to the public to promote against feeding wildlife on town-owned property. The town is involved with ongoing partnerships with residents and community groups to remove invasive species, including garlic mustard and buckthorn. Outreach programs also implemented on this effort. So just in comparison to 2021, the tree plantings from the Parks Division this year increased by about 1.72%. And I remember there was a question last meeting on the compensation program, and I got some word back from the Parks Division. So the annual tree plantings are not part of the tree compensation program. So when there's a construction project, and trees are removed from the property, they are added back to the property after the construction's done. And these plantings are mutually exclusive. So these are just additional plantings that are done. Okay, climate change and energy. So in 2022, the climate change adaptation plan was completed and endorsed by council. The fleet division continued to upgrade their vehicle fleet with the purchase of more fuel and technologically efficient vehicles. Also, the process of the procurement. They're also in the process of procuring an EV ice resurfacer and ice edger. The town's annual energy consumption across all facilities in 2022 equated to about 19.4 million kilowatt hours. Total charging sessions completed in 2022 equaled about 1,300, consuming about 12,244 kilowatt hours of energy. The town generated about 649,000 kilowatt hours of electricity through its solar PV systems across 4 town-owned facilities. The Green Development Standards Phase 1 was completed and endorsed by council in 2022. Council approved $50,000 in 2022 budget for capital projects involving energy conservation measures at town-owned facilities. And Facilities Division hired a consultant to conduct a building condition assessment study across all town-owned buildings, which included energy conservation measures. So compared to last year, our annual electricity consumption at town-owned facilities decreased about 2.3%, which is a very positive thing. And our solar energy generation increased about 5.6%. Just looking beyond the numbers, our PV systems, we've experienced over the year some discrepancies with some of the data because the systems were malfunctioning on quite a common occurrence. So the number of 5.6% could very well have been more, but because there was a lot of malfunctions this year, the energy generation was definitely limited. But we're definitely capable of producing even more. So hopefully next year we have better luck with our instrumentation. Okay, charging stations. So just a quick highlight of our charging stations that we've implemented. So over 2022, like I said in the previous slide, we have about 1,300 charging sessions that were done, producing about 12,243 kilowatt hours of energy. The town has made about $5,800 as a result of these charging stations, which the money ends up getting put into our green reserve fund and used for more green projects. Our total net profit, however, is about $3,900 after taking into consideration the operational costs, which is about $2,000. Our charging sessions, based on the data, Town Hall and the Armory, as well as the Aurora Family Leisure Complex, is where most of the sessions are taking place. Joint Operations Center shows the least amount, and we've had a lot of issues with the Joint Operations Center chargers, and it's still in the process of getting fixed. So I've been working with Ivy Charge on trying to troubleshoot the situation. Next slide. This is just some data I collected on a bi-monthly basis. And these are just the station use trends, as well as the total energy consumption that is being used per month. This just gives you an idea of the trends that are going on a monthly basis. So the Armory, as you can see on the top left, that has the highest usage and generation of electricity compared to all the other stations. And in the bottom middle, the Joint Operations Center 3, you can see the trend is extremely low. And again, this is because we've been having a lot of issues with these specific charging stations, and it's just been at an all-time low this year, unfortunately. Next slide, Jacqueline. Thank you. So the key takeaways from these graphs, I found sort of 3 trends. The EV charging sessions most frequently occur between July to December and are less frequent between January to June. The highest EV charging usage experience was mostly at the Armory, and the lowest was at the Joint Operations Center. This is looking at our building performance at town-owned facilities over 2022. So essentially compared, the greenhouse gas emissions have been reduced by about 24.7% compared to 2018 levels. Energy consumption has decreased by 20.8% or about 5.1 million kilowatt hours compared to 2018. The chart on the bottom left, I know it's hard to see, but essentially we, based on our previous ECDMP, our Energy Conservation Demand Management Plan, we've set targets by 2024. And for greenhouse gas emission inventory, natural gas reduction, electricity reduction compared to 2018 levels, we've surpassed the target by 2 to 3 times. So this is extremely significant for the town as we're implementing more energy conservation measures. We're seeing significant decreases in consumption usage. Next slide, Jacqueline, thank you. This is just some numbers as a reference to the changes that have been made. So as you can see, again, our greenhouse gas reduction target for 2023 is about 8% from 2018 levels, and we've surpassed that. As you can see in the last bar, 2022, we've surpassed that by about 24.7%. And our greenhouse gas emission intensity, Aurora Sport, this just shows the intensity scale. So we have Aurora Sports Dome, the SARC complex, and Joint Operations Centers are our top 3 greenhouse gas emission intensity buildings. Next slide, John. Thank you. This is just showing our electricity usage. And again, just take into reference of the numbers itself. We have a difference of about 13,628 kilowatt hours compared to 2018. We have about 95%. And then our electricity use intensity, we see again, Aurora Family Leisure Complex, the Stronach Aurora Recreation Complex, and Aurora Sports Dome are our highest electricity use intensity facilities. Next slide, Jacqueline. Thank you. And then this is just the trend that we see in natural gas as well. And again, this is just to reference in terms of numbers. And then this is annual cost. So we've saved about 12.1% compared to 2018 in terms of historic energy cost. So about $240,000 have been saved. Next slide, Jacqueline. Thank you. And these are costs avoided compared to 2018. So about $971,000 in savings. So for actual costs, it was about 1.66 million. Predicted cost is about 2.6 million in 2022. So as a result of our energy conservation measures, we actually saved almost $1 million worth of energy consumption. And then our final theme, we have environmental awareness. So after discussing with the corporate communications, the town has shared York Region social media messaging related to water quality, partnered with the region to access water-related print materials that are given out at Access Aurora. Annual emergency preparedness social media campaigns were done, annual anti-idling campaign. Our first annual EV showcase was done last year, and Community Go Green Challenge. Shared leaf social media messaging regarding backyard planting program, as well as Arboretum and LSRCA efforts. Aurora Chambers Street Festival, Enbridge Gas was a presenting sponsor, providing information on the Home Energy Rebate Plus program and the Home Winterproofing program. And Parks and Corporate Communications work collectively to promote the Adopt a Park program across the community. And that's it.
That's quite a lot.
A mouthful. No worries.
Say that out loud. Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions from the committee?
Yes.
Through the chair, thank you. Sorry to be thorn in your side, but that is like my thing. I have tons of questions.
Okay.
So I think I'll start off, and if anybody else wants to go from there, it's like, so kind of going backwards, my first question is, I noticed that you guys use the 2018 as your benchmark.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what 2018, and I'm wondering how it might change given what happened with COVID, and like, is something happening there? Would you expect?
That's a fair question. So from my understanding, 2018 was selected. That's when we started our community energy plan.
Okay,
So as part of that plan, the process is developing a benchmark.
Yep.
And because we started in 2018, we decided that 2018 was going to be our benchmark. And this is before I came to work for the town. So this is what was explained to me in the process. In terms of the COVID years, yes, that's going to be difficult in terms of data because 2020 was definitely an off year for everyone. Facilities were shut down. So we definitely, my suggestions, take the data with a grain of salt. We're definitely gonna have, as we start getting back to usual, business as usual. This year is definitely one of those business as usual years. So we're getting back to the thick of things. Our next ECDMP that our consultants are working on, we're definitely going to have more energy conservation measures to implement for the next 5 years. And this is definitely going to help us derive better data as we move forward. But yeah, like in terms of COVID, there's nothing much we can do about that. The numbers are the way they are.
It looks great. I think we should be patting ourselves on the back because there's a lot of good decreases there. I'm just wondering how sustainable it is. Or if we're saying it's like you said for that 8%, how we've gone down. Are we expecting a bit of a blip up, or should we be expecting a lower and lower trend?
I think, well, we're trying to keep track with our community energy plan target of 80%.
Okay.
Greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. So I'm very hopeful that we're going to be keeping our trend on a decreasing pace.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, based on the measures that we've implemented now across town-owned facilities, I wouldn't expect to see increases in consumption again.
Okay.
Last year was 2022, I guess, was just starting to get back to normal. So it kind of gave us a good reference year to work with. And based on the data that I've been looking at this year, it seems like we're still on a consistent trend.
I guess that kind of leads in just in general. My other question is, I'm always looking for targets, right? And so I appreciate those colored arrows up. And
I did it
down.
just for you.
Yeah.
I remember last meeting.
It helps, gives me context and stuff, right? So kind of think about the targets of success. I appreciate all the highlights that we have. Usually the question that comes to mind is, were there any areas of improvement that were identified or any gaps from there? And are we on target, right? Because I know that we have these targets for like 2024, 30 way out. You made mention for one indicator said, if we continue to have a decrease of like 1.25%, we're going to be on target. Is that similar for all the other targets, or are there some targets there where it's like, you know what, we did okay, but we might have to step it up if we're going to meet?
I think for the most part, we're on track for all of our targets. Like I said, for our building performance, the targets that we made for the previous energy conservation demand management plan for 2024, we've already surpassed. And again, when you look at the data, COVID comes up again, of course, but I think we're in a good spot right now for the town.
I have 2 more questions, but
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, so kind of looking at the EV charging stations, that's kind of interesting to me. You mentioned the joint operations and downtime and such. My question was the decrease in revenue and usage, I guess. Was it more downtime or was it more location? Or a combination of both?
I think it was more downtime because our joint operations center, we do have a lot of staff that work there. So the traffic is really high there. It's a good location to put. The problem is, again, just the downtime on the chargers itself.
So the main audience of joint operations really are the employees that work
Yeah.
there. Because like looking at where the armory is.
Yeah.
I know exactly where that is, and I can see why that would be the most used. I would have thought the community centers would have had more usage, but, yeah.
Out of all of them, I think the SARC has the most usage out of the community centers. Yeah. The AFLC. I do walk there on my lunches on occasion, and it's not a very high traffic area. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people, but the usage isn't as significant as the Stronach Aurora Recreation Complex is. But yeah, just to go back to the Joint Operations Center, that they've been really finicky over the last year, and even this year they're getting really finicky. So like there's definitely restriction in data
Okay.
in that sense. But we're trying to troubleshoot this problem. It's been a consistent thing over the last year, so it hasn't been anything new of late.
I feel like a lot of things about real estate, it's location,
Yeah.
right? Kind of seeing where they're clustered and where they're not clustered within Aurora. Yeah, kind of interesting. And then I guess the last question I had, kind of looking at the percentages and trying to figure out, is this good? Kind of measuring what the targets are. I noticed water installation was at 104%. And I think that's great for all the reasons you mentioned. I think the story that I'd be more interested in is how close are we to the number of water meter installations that we're trying to achieve? Like, have
Okay.
we achieved 40%, another 50%, and how many more years it might take?
Okay.
Yes, to that under, because I feel like that's a really key infrastructure goal that can be achieved.
Yeah. I don't have an answer to that.
No, yeah, no worries.
I can definitely look into it and our
Like
next,
if we're 80% way there, that is amazing and way better than if we're 20%.
Right.
Right, regardless of the 104% increase, whatever. I'll leave that at that, thank you.
Thank you. And the metering, the changing the water meters is something we've been doing for at least a few years. We
Yep.
Can only do X number a year, but we should,
I had the joy of being one of them.
oh, do you?
So,
And is your water bill higher? Or do you find it's tracking?
I haven't really looked into it. It's just something where it's like needs to be done.
Water metering is one of the main areas of concern for residents calling me. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have a couple of questions, and first, I guess, I'd like to say great presentation. A lot is happening in the town, so kudos to the successes. One question I had was around the community gardens. You referenced C2 land. What does that mean?
so C2 lands is a category of land. It's in our secondary plan. So the town has an official plan, and then they have the secondary plan. The secondary plan consists of a bunch of other category of lands. So this, I believe, is in the northeastern side of the town. If you go on the website, they'll show you the lands, the different land designations. But I believe it's just a parcel of land that's located in the northeastern part of town. That's not included in the official plan, so that they have a secondary plan for that.
Why were those lands chosen?
I think I'm not entirely sure. But there's a lot of natural environment over there, so there's not much residential area. So they use that as a point of to put a park or to make it a green space, but I'm not entirely sure.
The other question that I have is in regards to the charging stations. You talked about the operational cost. Does that include the capital costs?
So the operation cost is looking at the amount that the town is paying for the electricity usage. So we have the Ontario Power Generation has their fee per kilowatt hour that we look at. So then what I do is I just go through how much energy we've collected and we've used from the stations. I just multiply by that number.
Right.
So then our net profit is just that minus the total revenue that we've made, and then we get our net profit.
But it doesn't include then the capital cost actually.
No, that's, no, yeah.
And then my last question is, you talked about scope 3 emissions.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious if the town is now measuring all of scope emissions.
They're not.
or
No, this was something I just included because I know the town isn't measuring it right now. Hopefully in the future, this is something we do measure. Scope 3 emissions are really difficult to measure. And to be honest, it could even, I think it deserves to have its own job category in itself. But yeah, this is something I just put as a reference point. But no, we're not measuring yet. Scope 3. It's the scope 1 and 2.
I was just gonna add, from your presentation, I've had a little bit of a perspective shift because, when you think of the hybrid world of working from home and that's kind of the new norm. I think I've been wearing my corporate hat, a little too much because I'm just realizing now, like, obviously this is good for the environment, but from a corporate perspective, like, you know, getting everyone back into the office and work culture and team building and all of that. So it's interesting. I will leave here thinking a little bit differently.
It's,
Not obvious.
yeah,
kind of-
it's definitely good for the environment, but like it's like pick your poison, because if you have that, then it's in the office work life is not is hindered, obviously, right? Because more people are working from home. Like I said, I started after COVID hit, so for me, it was definitely a change to see less people in the office, and morally, it's just it's a lot tougher. And like Councillor Gardner was saying, like it's weird when you see people in person now. Like you're always used to seeing them over a computer screen, and you don't feel that same relationship with someone as you do with having a one-on-one communication. So yeah, there's definitely two perspectives to that.
I never thought of that before. Very obvious.
Yes, but if you're using less energy here, you're probably using more energy there.
But I guess my transportation.
Definitely transportation is the big saver.
It's just driving, you know, into the city and all that. I'm waiting for the traffic to come back, and then I'm like, well, actually, maybe this is the new norm. Maybe there won't be as much traffic.
Yeah. Like for reference, I commute from Mississauga to Aurora. So for me, coming 2 days a week, 3 days a week, that's a lot better than me coming every day. For myself and for the town's scope 3 emissions, as that's part of the category. So like it does make a difference at the end of the day, and times that by all these employees and where they're from all over the place. So it definitely saves on gas, it saves on carbon emissions through the transportation side of things. So.
Go ahead.
So my question was on that grant that was under the urban. How's that proceeding? You mentioned that you just applied for it.
We applied for it.
So-
And unfortunately, I'm not at liberty to say right now. That's all I can't, I can't speak of what's going on.
Okay. And my other question was on you mentioned there was something on Henderson with turtles.
Yes, a turtle crossing.
I know all about that.
I live in the area and I actually see I see it on Henderson. Can you elaborate what that whole thing is about?
They're just in the design phase. I could definitely get more information, and if Councillor Gardner wants to
If you're
speak to it.
involved. So it's called an eco passage, but actually what it turns out to be is there's a culvert that goes under the road under Henderson, and it's undersized. This has to do with flood water. So we need to replace the culvert. But also we have all these turtles crossing, and some are endangered species, and we have a few women who spend many hours protecting these turtles. So it was decided that the culvert and the eco passage would be combined. Eco passage is just a ledge inside the culvert that the wildlife uses. The money was put in the 2023 budget, but so far we're a little behind on doing it. Is that enough?
I live in the area and I've seen like some people stand like
Yeah.
there on like all hours of the day. I'm very confused by it because I'm just driving by. I had a feeling it had to do with the turtles, but I just wasn't sure because it's kudos to those.
It's-
Kudos because
They have dedicated, I even got a picture at 10 o'clock at night of a turtle trying to cross Bathurst Street. And they're protecting the turtles, so, yeah, and as you can imagine, and it's, it sounds so fancy, and if you look at it in the budget, it's like a couple $1 million, but actually a ledge is the eco passage, it's the culvert that, so expensive. Yes,
Sorry, one last.
Yeah, no
question.
worries.
Kind of digging into the numbers. The other thing that has hit me is the participation of multi-residential
Yeah.
programs, and that's 0%. And seeing how it's been at 30 for the past few years.
Yeah.
Once again, just the idea, I don't know how many multi-residential buildings there are in your region, or sorry, in Aurora. The idea, if that's something that can help to provide context. That
Yeah.
helps me.
I don't have a number, but I can definitely look into that, and next meeting, we can just definitely discuss further on that.
Not only the buildings, but like the gravy would be how many households do those buildings represent?
Right,
Because I feel like if it's a lot, that is a great success story to say it's not only 30 buildings. It represents like who knows how many households, right?
yeah, we don't have a lot of, they're medium rise buildings, because we have a height limit. And I wanted to ask you what that involves, because I live in a building and we have battery recycling, electronic waste, and blue recycling. But some places have clothing or fabric clothing recycling. So it depends, but nobody has organic waste recycling, as far as I know.
I don't think so.
Because you have to kind of build that into a building when you're building it, you need a special area, you have to make sure it doesn't smell. And I don't think we've gone after that at all. But the construction waste, when this committee first started, construction waste was at the very bottom of the list for recycling things. So it looks like we got to the bottom of the list, which is very good.
Yeah.
Just want to make a comment on the David Tomlinson Nature Reserve. I don't know if you've read anything in the newspaper, but that is a sanctuary for wildlife. And there are walking trails in there, but they're also blinds. So if you want to view the wildlife, you have to go into this. Do you know what a blind is? It kind of, so the animals can't see you. But we forgot to put up signs that said no dogs allowed. So there was a controversy about people walking dogs in the nature reserve, and that's absolutely a no-no because they would scare the wildlife. So it was quite a controversial subject a while ago.
Through you, Madam Chair, Ken.
Oh, Ken, I'm so sorry.
That's quite okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. Through you, Madam Chair. Just wanted one question with regard to town fleet vehicles and how many of those vehicles might be hybrid or EV. And just as a corollary to that, do they use the public EV chargers or do they use another source?
I believe. I don't know. Sorry, Ken. I don't know if I know the answer to that.
Go find out though.
I can go find out.
Thank you for the question. Sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you. I know, I've been on that side of, been on the screen. I know how it feels. Want to say something?
And sorry, just one last question, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah, in terms of waste diversion, I would take that to mean that stuff that's not going to landfill. So anything that is going into the blue bin as well as into the residential green bin. I'm just wondering, in terms of audits, in terms of stuff that's not supposed to be going into blue bin, like for example, coffee cups that have like whether it's from Tim's or Tim Hortons or from Starbucks. I'm just wondering if in terms of that waste diversion effort, that there's some allowance for, I guess, contaminated elements, and what percentage that might represent in terms of the total diversion effort.
I don't know the percentage, but there's definitely some leeway in that data to assume that there's some contamination. I'd have to ask the waste management sector for more information on that. But just on personal experience, I mean, yeah, I think we're all guilty sometimes of not putting everything exactly where it's supposed to be, but I would take that number with a grain of salt. Ken? Yeah.
Good question. Thank you, Ken. Yes.
I make another, I guess it's a question or comment. I personally feel, and I've heard other people have said the same thing, to go to the waste depots. Our closest one, the other had to go down to Eglinton,
East Gwillimbury has.
East Gwillimbury or Elgin Mills, I guess.
Okay.
And a lot of people find it frustrating because they're both not conveniently sort of located. Is there any efforts to try and figure out how to collect things more locally for hazardous waste? And
From my understanding, so the e-waste, we have a program that we just implemented. I don't know if corporate communications has made any promotional advertisements on that yet, but we do have like a cell phone recycling program. I don't know if I mentioned that in the last meeting. I may have mentioned it. So for e-waste, that'd be a good opportunity. There are two facilities. So SARC is one of them where you can drop off your e-waste, and then the AFLC is the other spot where you can drop off your e-waste. And we're working in collaboration with Green Tech on that. Cell phones, tablets. There's a list of e-waste that is acceptable, and then there's a list that have unacceptable items. I'll work with communications and we'll try to get some promotional pieces out, because we made the promotional pieces and I thought they already sent it out for public view.
All ongoing, because
Yeah.
Okay, because I remember that maybe like last year, the beginning of this year, and I saw it being communicated, and I went to actually recycle something during swimming lessons, and then the girls there were kind of like, oh, I don't know, I think that's done. So I think.
Oh, this is an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
That's strange how they.
And maybe I'm misunderstanding, but so my impression was that, oh, it was just like a one-time kind of promotion.
Right.
And now I've got to like go to Best Buy or somewhere else.
No, this is an ongoing thing. So
Yeah.
the staff should have knowledge about this because they've been informed. So.
Was that the SARC or the leisure complex?
Sorry.
We'll look into that.
It's like,
Okay, this came out about May, I believe.
yeah, it was after our first. meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
But I'll maybe try again. Is it like a box of the?
it's a green bin. It's a big green bin. If there's issues with trying to find it, then maybe I'm gonna speak to communications and be like, maybe we should make a big poster or something just to direct.
Also, could you speak to staff at SARC, whoever is managing?
Yeah, I can also speak to John Furman because
Speak to John.
I can speak to John about that.
You said,
It could have been a one-off by all means,
no, but it's
you know.
one too much because that would
Yeah.
discourage,
Yeah.
Um,
And I feel like it's the season, right? Like
Yeah.
skating and hockey and whatever else is coming.
Yeah, it's important.
The traffic.
Most of the town facilities have battery drop off. So, and that certainly batteries certainly contaminate.
Mhm.
Yeah, good questions. Thank you. Ken,
Hi, sorry, no, I just wanted to add for clarification, because I've used this in the past, is that at the operations center, that there are like a couple of days of the year where you can drop off all your e-waste, so from your TVs to your tablets to your printers to your batteries to paint cans and so forth, and essentially you just drive through the op center, and there are people that you give your stuff to, and they put it into the correct containers or the dumpsters or whatever to be further processed. So there are days that I have actually seen advertised in the Aurora newspaper as well as on social media. So just wanted to throw that out there, given that that as a resident, I do use those, given the opportunity to do so.
Ken, are you familiar with the East Gwillimbury Depot, which really is just north of Davis Drive, so it's not so far.
Right,
Is-
no,
it-
sorry,
It
go on.
sounds like paint cans, it sounds like they might be collecting things that, but then who wants to have it hanging around? It's
No,
not
that's
a bad
correct.
drive to East Gwillimbury.
Yeah, that's just at Bales and Garfield, right? So it's at, and they have 2 depots there, and you just drive through and open up your trunk, and they'll take the stuff right out as well too. So it's like
Okay,
literally 10 minutes away, right? So it's a very good facility operated by the regional municipality of York. So
thank you.
And I believe Waste Management is also planning on doing I think they do one event each year for the e-waste with a big bin. So you have the phone recycling program that we have at those 2 facilities, plus a big event. That's what they informed me about. So I'll definitely let everyone know on a date if it's gonna. I don't know if it happened already this year, but for next year I can give a date when they do a big event for it.
We also collect e-waste here. So every time you come to a meeting, bring your e-waste. There's a bin in the hall. Okay, we're gonna call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Are you in favor or opposed?
That's slow.
Thank you. That carries. And now we have our presentation. I have to have a mover and a seconder, right? Okay. So this is regarding the corporate environmental action plan progress report. No, you just did that, right? 7.2, energy and climate change analyst, energy compensation and demand management plan renewal. May I have a mover and seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion. Thank you. I pick you. Okay. I hate when people do that. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. We are here representing Walter Fetty. Walter Fetty has been engaged to update the Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan for this new period, 2024 to 2029. That's what we'll be doing. And we also completed the PAS project. So we're very happy to be updating this slide. So we just wanted to put a quick agenda for our presentation today. We just want to do a quick overview of the project, the timeline, and where we are at right now. So just getting to know our team, what the project and goals are, the milestones for the project, and what our next steps will be. Slide, please. So here today, I'm Marlene Alleman. I'm the project manager for the project. Max is our energy analyst. And Corey Rosa is not here at the moment, but he is one of our energy engineer and part of the and Caden, he didn't make it into our slide, but he's also part of our team, and he is also an energy analyst and collaborating in the project as well. The overall goal for the project is to achieve 80% reduction by 2050 from the 2018 levels. And the project targets are to create an interim targets to help achieve the 2050 goals. So Max is doing a lot of the work and building a scenarios for short term between 2025 and 2030. The medium term will be between 2030 and 2035, and the long term between 2025 and 2050. Slide, please.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about work we've done to date. So we just got started on this project couple months ago now. We had a kickoff with Bastion. We've so far reviewed all the existing plans, documentation from the town of Aurora, as well as reviewed the progress reports and other milestones. It's important to note that the town of Aurora is going through the FCM PCP framework, the Partners for Climate Protection. And it's just a step-by-step framework that outlines the goal setting that's initially happened with the other documentation and strategic plans, and then getting into identifying measures and coming up with what new ideas, what will be implemented, and then finally for savings. So that's some of what Sebastian was updating already on this year. This new ECDMP will be going into greater detail and coming up with new ideas, suggesting new measures to be implemented over the next 25 years until 2030. Just to keep on track to get to that 80% reduction goal. So first off, we've reviewed existing documentation. Right now, we're in the market research and analysis stage. So we're looking at other municipalities and what different municipalities are focusing on, whether that be fleet or their buildings or commuter emissions, et cetera. That will be, and after each step, we're submitting a technical memorandum, which Sebastian is reviewing. And then at the end, we will be presenting our final report after all three are done. We'll combine them into a single report and be presenting that to you guys, the EAC. And that'll have a lot more details, a lot more graphs. It'll be a longer presentation than this one today. This one is just introducing us and letting you guys know what's in the pipeline. And then our last step of this project will be finishing that ECDM plan and putting together recommendations. So that plan will include multiple scenarios, different measures that we will apply across the buildings as well as across fleet in order to try and meet those emission targets. We're also comparing to what was set out in the previous plan. So are we on track? Have we met those 5-year targets? The 2019 plan that we completed only had 5-year targets. They didn't look further into the future. So yes, as Marlon said, we're looking to set some short-term, medium-term, and that long-term 2050 goal, just to give that overall structure to the project. Yeah, I think next slide. And the next step, so as I said, we're doing our research into other municipalities, and we'll be starting our analysis. So we've already collected a lot of the utility data, fleet data. We've reviewed BCAs, we reviewed energy audits to get an understanding of what is the condition of the buildings today, and what can we do, and what will be those costs. So we'll be reviewing in the measures that we analyze, we'll be putting together high level costs per square footage basis. This type of project, so an ECDMP is mandated by the Ontario government that every municipality completes one every 5 years. And in this, we won't be visiting all these sites. We won't be visiting, there's around 30 buildings in the portfolio for Aurora. But instead of visiting them, we're looking at other audits that other consultants have done, and then giving some high level recommendations and an overall strategy to stay on target for that 80 by 50 goal. Yeah, next slide. I think that's questions. No, never mind. So questions, open it up. Yes.
I have a question. I'm not sure if it's directed at you or the town. Sorry, actually, that's a good question. Okay. My question is around the target itself. 80% by 2050 doesn't seem very ambitious.
I'm sorry, doesn't seem very
Ambitious. The global narrative right now is being net zero by 2050, and people are really trying to push that envelope for it to be sooner, just given the climate crisis. So I'm just wondering, you know, is there any discussion, given that this is a plan for 24 to 29? I believe?
Yes, correct.
Is that the target that's being looked at?
Is that set by the province?
No, the target would be set by the town.
Uh-huh.
That 80 by 50 is set by the town based on that 2018 baseline. And our understanding that came from, that was the first year they had very complete data. So that was chosen to be the baseline. And then working off of that, you make a good point that a lot of, and this will come up in our other municipality review, there are other municipalities going towards net zero goals. We'll say, in my experience doing a lot of net zero plans for specific buildings, reaching an 80% reduction target without carbon offsets is quite difficult. And that remaining 20% will be at carbon offsets to get to net zero, and that'll be across the board for municipalities carbon offsets to classify their operations as net zero. So would you like a further explanation on carbon offsets, or is that clear to the group?
Yes, can you speak to it?
I can speak to it. So Sebastian brought up scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. So scope 1 is used on site. So if you're burning natural gas on site, that's scope 1. If you're using electricity in your building, that is scope 2 emissions, because that electricity may have been generated by a fossil fuel plant down the road. So it's not on your property, but you're consuming that energy on your property. And then scope 3 is commuter emissions, other like deliveries, other outside of those two. So it's ultimately, when we look at net zero plans, we're removing all the fossil fuels from a facility and electrifying it. But that electricity still has greenhouse gas emissions associated with it because of those scope 2 emissions, because our grid is not perfectly clean yet and is not forecast to be 100% renewables for the near future. So then what you're left with is buying carbon offsets to offset that those emissions that are coming from the grid. And yeah, so when you've fully electrified your building, you're likely to still have more than 20% of your emissions remaining from that electricity use that's inherent to your heating, your lighting, your ventilation, et cetera. So yeah, so that, I think that's a good, so in terms of should there be a more aggressive target, I think that's something that could be discussed. We are creating a plan to align with what the town proposed, which is why we're aiming at that 80 for 50. And that will include as many measures as we think are reasonable and are financially feasible to be undertaken for these facilities for fleet. And like, yes, some to meet whatever goal it may be, 80%, or if it's the goal is 100%, it'll just be purchasing more annual carbon offsets.
Thank you.
Happy to talk about this stuff.
I have a very boring question after that one. Just looking at the milestones, I'm just wondering, how does that line up timeline?
Great question. We'll be completing the whole project by December of this year. So a couple months. Yeah, I do not have specific dates off the top of my head, but it's a few weeks to the second. Yeah, and then a few more weeks or about a month to the last deadline.
You said you were going to look at other municipalities. Is it based on population density? Like, how can you compare two towns or two cities?
Yes, that's a great question. We'll be looking a lot at what ideas other people are coming up with to see who's on the cutting edge. So regardless of their population, ultimately, we will be looking at like Toronto, Mississauga, Brampton, some of these big municipalities, because they're often the ones that are leading edge of energy solutions and reducing their carbon emissions. And we're looking to take ideas that they're using already to add them into the town of Aurora's plan. So we aren't comparing them in a like benchmarking exercise, but we're trying to make sure that we are in line with the ideas, the innovation that's going on with this space with other municipalities.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Yep.
If it's an idea generation, any thoughts about going outside of Ontario municipalities, or do you just have a scope in the?
We will be looking at others. New York is a city that has great plans and is on the forefront. So we'll be looking at what they're doing. Vancouver as well also is known to be pushing the envelope there. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Sorry, one
Yes.
last question, kind of thinking about, I love the idea of the interim targets to keep us on track. And sometimes I know that in my work, sometimes the targets we set are, it's aspirational. Sometimes there it's like, this is one step higher. I'm wondering how aggressive might be the targets, or what might the methodology be? And just the idea of, if we miss a target, how much leeway or flexibility might be built into some, say, yeah.
Fair question. So we're gonna look towards that end goal of that 80/50 and build towards that. And the biggest input will likely be the asset management plan, the AMP. Because when we do energy efficient upgrades, if we're replacing boilers, replacing envelope components such as roofs and walls, we want to align with the asset management plan, because that'll hope there's already money set aside, and then the incremental cost is much smaller. So we'll likely look at that. Say all the boilers need to be done in the next 5 years. We'll look at how many emissions we could reduce if all those boilers do get replaced in the next 5 years with a high efficiency option, and that will be our target. So we'll set our targets based on what we think, what aligns with the AMP. Does that answer your question there?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just divide by number of
No.
years linear, it's gonna be based on matching to the funding. So if the funding falls through.
Yeah.
Odds are we're not meeting our targets. Okay.
Correct. Or if there's other external factors, something we've been facing in the industry in the last few years, is, equipment costs have been going up dramatically. And it's difficult for us to do accurate costing when we get a quote and then 12 months later, it's 50% higher than it was. So that could be the case here, where we'll put in numbers as they are today, but in 4 years, when you go to replace some equipment, it's unsure if that cost will be accurate. And it's also unclear, when you created your asset management plan, they've taken an estimate at inflation and at those replacement costs, but they may be short, they may be high when it comes time. So that can also impact whether things
So
are.
depending on the assumptions, it sounds like.
Yes,
Okay.
if our assumptions prove true, we'll be on track. That's,
Let's hope they're true.
yes.
So when is our first meeting for 2024?
I have no idea. I don't think they came out with a schedule yet.
Aha,
Jacqueline,
question.
So-
Answer.
Through you, Madam Chair, the 2024 calendar will be approved by council in October, and then we can provide all of the dates for 2024.
Okay, so hopefully, but you will have everything ready, a report ready for the end of 2023?
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. So we'll see you early in the new year.
Yes, exactly. I
Great.
think our tentative date is in February sometime.
February.
February, that sounds
Yeah.
like, yeah. Okay, great.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we have a motion on the table. So all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. Thank you. Okay, where am I?
8.1. Almost there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So I have a question. What has changed in the committee's terms of reference?
Nothing. So through you, Madam Chair, if you want to put this item on the floor, I should speak to it.
Okay. Could somebody please put the memorandum on the committee's terms of reference on the floor? Thank you, Ken. Sir in the jacket. Okay,
I can start if you want.
yes,
Sure.
please.
Okay, so through you, Madam Chair, this is a follow-up to your meeting in May. There were some questions about the terms of reference and your role as committee members. So I put together a brief memorandum for you based on your terms of reference and some of the questions that I heard from the recording. There are 0 changes to what has been approved by council, and there are no recommendations for changes. This is purely just an informational item for the committee. So if there are any questions today, I'm here. And if not, I can always address them by email.
Do you remember the questions that the committee had?
I do, yes. So the first one was your roles and responsibilities as a committee and board member. So I just put a little summary there for you. It's very similar to the one in your handbook, which I know you referenced that you had read and reviewed. And it's also very similar to what was provided by our town clerk and our integrity commissioner in the orientation that you all attended. I believe that was about in March. And then the comments from committee to council was also discussed. So how are your comments on items like our 2 items today brought forward to council? So I just summarized that those would be captured by any staff in attendance. So for today, as an example, Sebastian would capture those comments and bring them forward through his business work and through any reports that were going to general committee in the future. And then I believe the last question was regarding new business. So if something's brought up in new business, sort of where does it go from there? So there's a couple different outcomes that may occur. One, staff can confirm if it's already being reviewed internally or whether it's on any type of project plan. So Sebastian can answer during a meeting, and he can also take things away if it's not necessarily his department, but he can get answers for you. Or a member of council can decide to bring forward an item to a future general committee meeting as a notice of motion. So it could be our councillor who's in attendance today. It could be any other councillor on council, and it could be our mayor. And what happens with the notice of motion is it goes on a general committee agenda and it gets voted on at our subsequent council meeting. So it would need a majority of council to vote on it to direct staff to either look into it, provide additional information, implement something, sort of depending on what the subject matter was.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, we get the minutes of all the committees. So if there was something that I thought needed to be discussed at the council table, then I would do it, or Rachel would do it then. For tonight's meeting, there wouldn't be anything, but if there was something that seemed to concern the committee or be very important to the committee, then we would talk about it at the meeting. Thank you. Well, is there any new business?
Is the question on the item?
Oh,
Not that I'm gonna try this out.
okay, give it a shot.
Can you, sorry, Madam Chair, can you just call a vote on that item?
Oh, yes,
Move on.
yes. All those in favor? Thank you. New business.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, so. I feel like I've been hearing a lot about the green belts lately. And I've been hearing about kind of like the housing commitments and everything else. And given that the green belt runs through Aurora, I'm wondering if there's been any analysis that's been done yet to say how current legislation is going to impact Aurora specifically. And I guess given the focus of this committee, running it from an environmental lens. Right, so I hear a lot of stuff that's happening at the provincial level. I hear it filtered through the news, but I'm wondering if any analysis has been done specifically filtering it through Aurora, that Aurora lens, and how it may or may not affect. I don't want to focus on the housing because I've seen the mayor's commitment to making the 8,000. I'm really kind of interested more about through the environmental lens for the purpose of this committee.
My understanding is that Aurora is not affected at the moment. Do you have it? Or, well, we never know with the government, but that we're not
Like,
on the radar.
I don't know, I haven't done my research to figure out if any of the parcels of land. are
No,
in
no.
Aurora.
No, no.
I'm not sure if there are any potential parcels of land that might come up in the future, or I guess I'm very ignorant as to where these 8,000 houses are gonna be, and if that's in the existing plan, or if that's still yet to be done, and if it's still yet to be done, is there an environmental component that might benefit coming to discussion here?
Well, with the housing pledge that was on the GC and will be on the council meeting, I believe I will be able to vote for it, but one of my conditions will be that the environmental assessment process stays in place. With respect to, well, I'm really not, all I can tell you is that Aurora is supposed to grow by 2051.
Yeah.
by 21,000 people. So this is a commitment to grow the town until 2031 by 8,000 people. So this is a lot of fast growth. But it's not, we don't know if it's housing, actual housing starts, housing construction, or whether it's completed housing.
Yeah, so I guess,
Which-
I'm trying for the purposes.
Yeah.
This committee to try and stay away from that. But like, I feel like everyone is saying that we need more housing, which I agree with, right? And I feel like some of the details and discussion are more about where is it going to be put and do we have the infrastructure? And I feel like those are the things I'm wondering if analysis has been done, and once again, would it be appropriate to have that discussion around here, or is it taken care of by other?
Those were my questions. Those two questions were my questions at the general committee meeting. And I don't have an answer. I don't think we got enough information at the general committee meeting, but we did get a chart, which you should be able to access, which says at the moment we have, I think, 8,500 units that are either approved or are at the tribunal or the planning department is looking at. So you can, if you look at the chart, you can see where those units are proposed to be built.
Like I said, I guess I bring this out to others, like, as an Aurora resident, like, trying to find this information for an Aurora specific lens. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, but if there is information, I'm wondering.
The controversy about Greenbelt land has nothing to do with Aurora.
I don't believe,
No,
my understanding, no.
it's going in the other direction.
So there are no parcels that have.
No.
Taken, no
No.
parcels that could be taken in the future.
No, so you're talking about environmental packages of land. Because, or farmland, because that's,
Yeah, what I'm assuming that there are areas that are protected. That are zoned as not being able to touch, and now they are,
no,
but not in Aurora.
that's right, but our big environmental protected land is the Oak Ridges Moraine. And it's covered by the Oak Ridges Moraine Act and Plan, and so far it's been completely, or almost completely off limits. So we do. Because you never know what's going to happen. But so far, that land is not being touched. And that land is very important because it filters our water. And it's like a sponge and absorbs everything. So you don't want to put a lot of hard surface on it because then it can't do its natural function. So far, it's quite protected in legislation. So I'll let you know if we need to start fighting for anything, folks. But if you want to see where the land for these 8,000 homes is going to be, you can look on this chart. It would be included with our council meeting from last week was public planning. So what was it? You would know. September 5th is the chart. Can you pull up the chart and or tell everybody how to get it?
I guess, not sure if there's value in bringing it here as us as representatives to the, I guess, to the community and stuff, right? We can definitely take a look at it. I'm thinking about others in the community who might have these questions, might stumble across us. Maybe they find it.
Nobody has expressed interest, as far as I know, from presenting to this committee about anything. The public can always come and present to us. It would be on our agenda. So nobody has expressed any interest. It's really, although it really does concern the environment in many ways, it's not part of our committee's mandate, as far as I know.
And I guess this is where it comes back to that memo from the previous, what is our role? And is it, do we actively bring stuff, do we wait past the stuff?
Any member of this committee can suggest something to Sebastian or to the chair, to Rachel, to be on the agenda, if there's anything that's of interest to you, but it would obviously pertain to what's going on in Aurora. And the chart, which came at the last minute, is,
Oh, was it email?
yeah, I got it by email. Is it online?
So the chart that I see is this, isn't it? It's the initiatives.
Okay, I'm gonna ask to have, that was just kind of walked onto the agenda at the general committee, so it wasn't online, but it's interesting to see where they're going to be building these homes potentially. So I'll ask to have that put online.
Can send it by email if you'd like to the committee members.
Yes, perfect. Oh, she's wonderful because she's making it really easy for everyone. And then,
I actually like the idea that it's something that should be on.
but it should be,
Oh,
but it should be
absolutely.
online. Will you, can you take
Absolutely.
care of that?
No problem.
Yeah, I agree. Everything should be as transparent as possible. Okay. I think we're done, folks.
May I ask a question?
Of course you may.
Can I go back to my
Yes.
earlier comment as well as that?
Yes, you may.
Sure how formalities work. How, like, the fact that I made that suggestion that we need more ambitious targets, how can that be received in terms of where does that go? Because that doesn't even meet the Paris Agreement, the IPCC targets of being at least net zero by 2050. I think the town of Aurora is below standards. So I have to say, being on this committee, I'm an environmentalist. I do this in my day job. We're not even meeting the basic standards. So I think if I can strongly advocate, that needs to change because it'll look poorly on the town that we're not even meeting.
May I suggest that when we wait until we get the report from the consultants, then that will go to council. And I think that might be the appropriate time to ask the question, what more can we do? Sebastian?
Yeah.
I don't think we should ask it coming out of this committee right yet. We could ask it when we get presented the report, which sometimes we get presented before council, sometimes we get presented at the same time and sometimes after. So I would express in email, anybody who's interested, attention Rachel, like CC everybody, but it would be to Rachel's attention. So that is a concern you had rising from today's meeting. And you would appreciate it if you would look into it and provide some answers. That is, you feel it's a very important thing, and then that'll give her something official. Okay, so are you okay with that?
Yeah, and I guess going back to the purpose of these meetings and what our role is, I think that's where I'm wondering, is this part of our role to be providing, I guess, feedback, advice, suggestions?
Please.
Through you, Madam Chair. So yeah, just to further explain, all of your comments today are captured by our staff who are in attendance, and it's their responsibility to bring that forward within the projects as well. So whether it's Sebastian or somebody else who's working on that project, it's their responsibility to capture these comments as part of it. You'll also notice staff reports at our general committee and council meetings. There is a section called advisory committee comments. And if it's something that has come to an advisory committee, that is where those comments are also captured. So you will notice in our minutes, they are high level and they're without note and comment. So you'll see themes in the minutes and things like that without specific recommendations. But the idea is that these advisory committees are providing all of this information to staff to then further bring it to our consultants or to council or general committee when they make those decisions down the road.
So in this particular case, so how would this go forward?
So in the minutes today, I will capture that these comments were provided by the committee during the consultant presentation. And Sebastian would also capture those in his follow-up meetings with the consultant while developing this plan.
So I don't send an email, or should I? still send
Well,
an email?
I don't want to discourage you from ever sending an email. You're welcome to, but I just want to let you know that comments provided during a meeting are captured by staff and through the minutes as well.
I would send an email
Mhm.
and also, you know, we don't get these minutes for, well, we get them this cycle.
You'll get the
Next cycle.
Yeah.
So we won't get them on an agenda till February. So I would suggest you send the email and then we have, you know, something to think about and work on.
Kind of following up on that, having sat on a previous committee, I know we've had also discussions about kind of that communication feedback loop, right? And I'm wondering if there was an opportunity here to kind of build into our process, like it's going to be captured in meetings and stuff. But if it is brought forward from staff members, if staff members can bring it back to us at our next agenda and kind of say, yeah, something was done about it.
Follow up.
Put the onus on us to kind of like.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. Just, yeah, if something like this is raised, yes.
You just have Ken.
Ken?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Just one last order of business. As everyone is aware, David Tomlinson sadly passed away on September 8th. And in 2020, he was recognized by the town with the naming of the David Tomlinson Nature Reserve, and he and his wife Deidre had generously opened their home for many, many years in a spot known as Merlin's Hollow. I just think it is appropriate that the committee formally or officially re-recognize the great work of Mr. Tomlinson and his partner, and who both of them were obviously environmentalists extraordinaire and left a very indelible mark on the town. So just wanted to put that forward just as a small recognition.
Thank you, Ken. That's a really good idea. So that's going to be in the minutes.
Yes, I'll officially recommend.
And we'll be discussing it tomorrow night at the meeting. And if anybody gets the Auroran or is online, there's a great picture of him. He once came to a council meeting and I can't remember what the occasion was, but he came right from work in his Wellington boots and his, you know, not particularly clean, and like he didn't care about the political stuff. He really cared about nature. So it was a great loss. Thank you, Ken. You want to say anything?
I got nothing left.
Nothing left. Well, I guess at this point I'll call for a motion to adjourn. All your hands are going to go up, right? Oh, Ken, we got Ken's hand there. Thank you, Ken. Everybody wants to stay?
Oh.
Pick someone. All those in favor? That passes. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Ken.